Hey people, it's me again. So, anyways, as far as how everything is going here, when it comes to like the government shutdown, I haven't really been paying that much attention to it, but this isn't really like the first time that happened in U.S. history of that sort. But considering all of that, there is going to be the whole blame game, you know, whether if it's like Democrats pointing fingers or Republicans pointing fingers and all of that. But I'm probably with like any of the people who think that both sides are equally to blame of that sort. You know, so I mean that's like my 2 cents about that sort of thing here. But you know, the first time that I can remember something like that sort was just about 30 years ago when Clinton was president. And so this was probably like the second half of Clinton's first term, and when it was like the whole Republican revolution, and when Newt Gingrich became Speaker of the House. And and then in a way, there were people that said that he was mostly to blame for the government shutdown of that sort because he wasn't willing to work with President Bill Clinton at the time, and mainly mainly I think the goal of that time was just to make Clinton look bad enough that he wouldn't get reelected in '96. But then lo and behold, he ends up getting reelected, and so that was like the thing there, if if I could recall correctly, because I remember it was like around '95 and maybe a little bit into '96, or was it something else? I can't even remember the exact story, but Gingrich was kind of bit of the foil to Bill Clinton at that time, you know. But then it reminds me of Saturday Night Live way back then when Chris Farley was still alive, and he was the one that played Newt Gingrich, and it was so I think it was probably like the 94, or was it 90 Christmas of '94, Christmas of '95. I can't even remember when that happened, but they were doing the whole "It's a Wonderful Life" bit, and having Chris Farley playing Newt Gingrich in that bit, where it was like the Republicans' worst nightmare when it came to all that, you know, that sort. And so that was one of the things I could remember about that. But then, if I remember correctly, it was around like during Clinton's second term as president, and then the whole thing with Monica Lewinsky was one other thing there. And then, of course, Newt Gingrich, of course, was spearheading the whole impeachment against him. And then I think he ended up stepping down as Speaker of the House because of the fact that he was a hypocrite, you know, and the fact that he was having an affair and cheating on his wife. I think it was like his first or second wife. I can't even remember the exact story. But then he was the biggest hypocrites when it came to like those family values type of conservatives, who spearhead that sort of thing, but yet they can't, you know, stick to their wives and all that, you know. And there was a long list of them that were like that, you know, like the whole John Ensign and that one senator from Nevada, or that that one. I think it was that senator that was from, was it South Carolina? Was the one, I can't even remember his name. You know, but and he was the one that cheated on his wife. You know, as far as that goes, and these were the ones who were like against marriage equality. You know, so that was one of the bigger reasons why um, it shifted that way. You know, so anyways, um, the other thing I was gonna mention, you know, while I'm on the subject of politics and all of that, was, you know, when it came to like all the deeper analyses on the gubernatorial elections in Virginia, or New Jersey, of that sort, you know, because it was one of the things that you had to, like, you know, consider like the bellwether type counties, or like purple counties of that sort. I think that's what you would call it in a way, where they could go back and forth in some ways. And then the biggest like example would be like Loudoun County, Virginia, or like Cumberland County, New Jersey, of that sort, because depending on those two counties' track record as far as in the last couple presidential elections, congressional elections, senate elections, gubernatorial elections, you know, state senate, state house of representative elections, and all that, you know. So that was like one of the biggest takeaways on that. But it was like here in Orange County, you know, that there was a bit of like a shift when it came to that, you know. And it was like the whole 2018 midterm election, you know, where all of like the congressmen in Orange County were Republican prior to that, and they all have been replaced by Democrats, and then, yeah, and that was like the thing there. So, anyways, I was gonna mention that it was like the local congressman. I think it was Harley Ruda. I think that was his name, but he was the one that elected there. But then he had lost re-election in 2020 against what's her name, Michelle Steele. You know, and so I think I think she's still in Congress, but I think she's like maybe like one of the few Republicans that are left in Orange County, I think. But I'm not exactly certain if she's still in Congress or not. So that was like one of the things there. And but considering all of that, it was like the last three presidential elections that Orange County had went to the Democrat. You know, went to Clinton in 2016, Biden in 2020, then Harris in 2024. But it was something like that, or it was just simply that most of the people just didn't like Trump. You know, because if I recall correctly, that I think it was in the gubernatorial election, they had Orange County went to the guy who was challenging Governor Newsom at that point, and I think it was might have been a bit of a majority that wanted to recall Governor Newsom back in the 2021 recall election there. But, so, anyways, I think this is at the point where everybody's starting to gear up for the midterm elections, and then it's not just, you know, that, but it's also the gubernatorial elections that people are gonna be paying attention to, because it's basically the majority of the country has the their gubernatorial elections next year, because it's supposed to be like 34 states have the gubernatorial elections next year, and then those two, which would be, you know, New Hampshire and Virginia, have theirs every 2 years, and then how does it go again? And then we have the, I think it was, how many states was it? It was something like, I think that was like 12. It was something like, it was like 12 states that have their gubernatorial elections occurring the same year as the presidential elections, if I recall correctly. And then there's like, of course, the Virginia and New Jersey have that this year, and then like 2027 is basically the Louisiana and Mississippi gubernatorial elections, because so that would be 4 states that there, and so that's like 46, and then yeah, so that's just like the other thing that I had to also mention here, but considering all of that, I figure I'll perfectly have like some of my other analyses when it comes to like not just, you know, next year's midterm election, but all the other little things. But for now, I'm perfectly gonna be talking more about manifestations and other stuff there. You know. So, anyways, talk to you guys later.